भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येम अक्षभिः यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैर्तुष्टुवांसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितं यदायुः स्वस्ति नः इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नः तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्ददातु यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रक्षुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वदाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते तुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथा बोधं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So good evening everyone. So this is our series on Purusha Sukta and we are heading into part 5, which is quite an interesting writ that we are going to deal with. So before we go into the nitty-gritties of it, two aspects. Number one, like before, so that we get into the spirit of understanding Purusha Sukta, I'm going to play Purusha Sukta online and hopefully it will get fed through the audio here. And then we have Sushrut Kulkarni from Nottingham, who is going to briefly summarize all that we have read and contemplated so far with a focus on Varga 1. So let's get started with Purusha Sukta. Wonderful. So that's quite a very good rendition in YouTube. So we'll move on to the program today. So the way we thought we'll do this time, taking into account suggestions from friends and folks who phone in every week diligently and religiously. So we are going to have Shushrut Kulkarni giving a revision of what we have done for Varga 1. And as Reguji mentioned, and that's a brilliant idea last week, was that we finish off every week's session with another Shanti mantra. So this week, Neeta Kulkarni ji has agreed to do a few slides at the end, picking up a Shanti mantra from Yajurveda. Okay, so let's get started. So Abhijit, let's move to the next slide, please. So the next slide is just to remind you as to where we are at this point of time. So we have finished Varga 1 and we have just made our entry into Varga 2. And we are in the, if you like, the second rig of Varga 2 or the seventh rig within the Purusha Sukta. Okay, so over to Dr. Sushruth Kulkarni to give us a summary. And I think he's also got some interesting program around quiz. So I would strongly encourage all of us to actively participate in that, please. So next slide, Abhijit. Yeah. Abhijit, you want to move to the next slide, please?
Okay, I'm going to share screen.
So it's okay, Shushrut, Abhijit will kindly move the slides, yeah?
No, it's...
Unless you have a PowerPoint, that's fine, yeah, go for it. Yeah, if it's working, that's good.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. Right, so namaskar everybody. Thank you, Madhu, for giving me the opportunity. I thought it was really good to go through what we have learned so far. So I'm going to start off by saying what I have learned, and then I'll involve everyone, and hopefully everyone can contribute a bit. So the first thing we learned was that it is the most celebrated Vedic mantra, and it first appears in Rig Veda 10th Samhita, 10th Mandala 90th Suktam. But it is such an important mantra that it also appears in all the other three Vedas as well. Uh, it consists of 16 verses and it was conceived by Narayana Muni. So we have learned that Purusha is none other than Narayana or Brahman or Vishnu or the supreme creator, whatever name we would like to call him by. And the first thing I learned was that he is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. And the shloka that I got it from was Sahasra Shirsham Purushaha Sarasrakshat Sahasrapat. So moving on to the next things that we have learned, I now want everyone else to contribute as well. So I'm going to say what we learned, and if someone can pick out which shloka it comes from. So he is beyond all jivas and beyond relative time. Anyone?
Is it Purusha Evedam Sarva?
Purush. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay. He is beyond relative time and beyond all jivas. Yeah, it is part of it, but it is the whole thing. Sabhumim Vishwato Vrutva Atyantishta Dashangulam Purushaye Veda Sarvam Yadbhutam Yach Bhavyayam. Please pardon my pronunciation. Next, he is the controller of all jivas. We need to make this interactive. Come on, everyone, please. Shall I start picking people?
शासना नसने अभी
Anyone else?
Utamrutatva Sheshanu.
Yes, excellent, very good. Yes, it is. Yeah, okay, so that was one. The next one, his greatness is beyond our comprehension. Please unmute and speak.
It is that next line. Etavanasya mahima ato jayansya purusha.
Yes, well done, Sujit. He is all pervasive. He has avatar rupas, but also has three aspects which permanently live in heavenly abodes.
Tripado Darva. Is it right?
Yeah. Please go on, keep going.
Sorry. Adotya Purushaha Padosa. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce. It's a big letter for me. But that line, the Tripadorva.
त्रिपाद उद्भुत पुरुष
Yeah, very good. So it's both the lines. It is
पादोस्य
Padasya Vishwa Bhutani Tripadasya Brutam Divi. Yeah, as well as the one that we said now. Okay, so all pervasive has avatar rupas which come to this world, but also has three aspects which permanently live in the 3 heavenly abodes, as Madhu has said before. He pervades all creation, including that of Chaturmukha Brahma. Anyone?
ततो विश्वं व्यक्राम
रामतः विराजो पुरुषः।
And Shashana Shanai Abhi. Yeah. Excellent. And lastly, he was present before creation. He created Brahma, but he also stands beyond this creation.
तस्माद् विराड जायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः।
Yeah. Sajato.
अत्यर्चितवान्।
Yeah. Paschad Bhumimar
मधोपुरः।
Puraha. Yeah, excellent. So basically we have covered Varga 1, which this is my understanding. I found it very useful to go through the slides and revise everything and try and say the verses as well. It is very difficult for me. I can't pronounce it very well, but I think it was very useful. Everyone should try it as well. Thank you.
So sure, thank you very much. That's an excellent summary of what we have done for Varga 1. Really appreciate it, Sushil, for all the efforts and getting the PowerPoints together. So yes, so we did Varga 1. We discussed it quite elaborately over 3 to 4 weeks. And as I said, we have just done a Pravesha into Varga 2. So now let's move on to the lecture. So the first 2 slides that I put here is, I put a question mark. And I've said Vedas, and we have discussed this before. So there is a popular belief stroke disbelief or a wrong belief that Vedas are divided into 2 sections, Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. So the perception is some portions of the Vedas talk only about karma, the sacrificial duties and the yajna and the fire sacrifice, and you do this and that. What are your prescribed duties? What are not your prescribed duties, and so on and so forth. And there is a prevailing view that a big chunk of the Vedas is karma kanda, and that there is this final portion called the Upanishads, which is the Jnana Kanda, which deals with knowledge and philosophy, and it's the knowledge and philosophy around the Vedic Sanatana Dharma is the Jnana Kanda. So that is a prevailing view. Now, what I want to throw this more as a challenge is, we have been dealing with Purusha Sukta for the past 4 weeks. For 1 month, we have been dealing with Purusha Sukta. And as how Shushrut ji has very, very eloquently summarized all that he had learned around the verses on the first Varga of the Purusha Sukta, which, as you know, is in the Rig Veda Samhita. It is in the Samhita portions of the Vedas. It is not in the Upanishads portions of the Vedas. It is in the Samhita portion of the Vedas. So far in Varga 1 that we have read, where was the Karma Kanda aspect of it? So we dwelt quite deeply into each Rig, and we were able to extract the philosophical essence in each Rig of the first Varga. So my attempt here is to illustrate you the fact that by us as a team contemplating and studying the Purusha Sukta, we are actually proving this prevailing hypothesis wrong, that Vedas are divided into Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda. The true answer, the correct answer for what is the understanding of the Veda is whether it is a Aparavidya or Paravidya. So we had 3 or 4 months ago. So can I have somebody to volunteer and answer me what is Aparavidya and what is Paravidya, please? Any takers? So hello. So we got a volunteer.
Is Paravidya about material science, to do with materials?
Okay.
World.
World.
Right. Okay, yeah. So you're getting at the root of this. Yes. So in Mundaka Upanishad, there is this discussion that happens. Tasmai sahovacha dve vidye veditavye iti hasmat brahmavido vadanti para chaiva aparacha. Tatra apara rigvedo yajurvedaha samavedo atharvana vedaha siksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chando jyotishamiti atapara yaya tat aksharam adigamyate. So what this Upanishad is clearly telling us is Vedas, we discussed this before, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad. Vedas by definition are infinite, but at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, much of it was lost. Whatever was left was compiled by Veda Vyasa for our benefit. So that body of text, that Vedas, the knowledge that you get out of it depends upon your approach to the Vedas. If you look at the Vedas as only giving you an information around material science, for example, or normal mundane existence and the activities we have to do, then it becomes a aparavidya. But on the other hand, if you use the instruments of interpretation, if you use Vedantasutra, Veda Vyasa to understand what is the meaning within the Vedas, then it becomes, then it's clear that aspect. So that is what the Upanishad is saying, tata ata parayaya tad aksharam adigamyate. It becomes a paravidya when using the instruments of the Brahmasutra, you are able to understand that the words within the Vedas are only denoted. It is talking about this Parabrahman, and when you understand that the same Vedas become Paravidya. So the Veda is one. It depends on how you approach it. If your approach is not as tuned with the grammars, etymology, of the contextual relevance, and there are lots of rules of interpretation of the Vedas, then, if there is a superficial understanding of the Vedas, then it becomes an aparavidya. But if a deep etymological understanding of the Vedas, then it becomes paravidya. So the classic example of that is the first varga that we have dealt with so far, where we have actually been doing paravidya. So what we have been doing is taking each word, opening it up, and then dissecting it with etymological meanings and understand what is the philosophy behind those riks that are there in the first varga. So we can do two things. Either we can mechanically recite the Purusha Sukta and consider this as an aparavidya, or we can actually decide that we are going to understand it, the philosophical sense of it, then it becomes a paravidya. In Maha-Aitareya Upanishad, for example, it says, Tava yeta sarvaha richaha sarve vedaha sarve goshaha ekamaiva vyahrati prana eva prana richaha iti eva vidyat. Beautiful verse from Maha-Aitareya Upanishad, which says, every rik, richaha, every rik, every aspect, every sentence, every Vedas, every letter, every sound is only celebrating the greatness of the Purusha, of the great prana. Prana is, Mukhya prana is the real prana, which is the Parabrahman. So that is what Maha-Aitareya Upanishad is also saying. And finally, I wanted to pick up on this verse from Skanda Purana, which is also quite popular verse, but it gives us the framework in which we have to understand the Vedas. So it says, Trayo artaha sarva vedeshu, yeah, dasha artaha sarva bharate, Vishnu sahasranamna api nirantaram sahasra artakam. Yeah, so we discussed this before. Vedas at least 3 meanings, Bharatas at least 10, Vishnu sahasranama at least 100 different meanings of each word. So moving on to the next slide. So now I'm putting a very challenging question here. Okay, it's all well and good. You want to know the philosophical truths and so on. So the question is, why bother with Purusha Sukta? Why does one need to know about all the entities about the 24 Mahatattva, the 24 Tattvas, Mahat Tattva, Ahankara Tattva? What is the purpose? What is the reason behind this? Why do we need to know that? Okay, so to understand the background for this, I would request you to go to chapter 7 of the Bhagavad Gita. Look at the last 2 verses, 29 and 30. And then immediately look at chapter 8, where the further discussion between Arjuna and Krishna happens, where he discusses this in detail, this particular importance as to why we need to know that. So the 7th verse 29 goes like this. You're all familiar with this. Jara marana mokshaya mam ashritya yatanti ye brahmavit tadviduhu krishnam adhyatmam karma cha akhilam sa adibhutam adidaivam mam sadi yajnam cha e viduhu prayana kale api cha mam te viduhu yukta chetasaha. So that is what Krishna is saying in the last 2 verses of the 7th chapter. And immediately Arjuna has got a question. So that is what becomes the 8th chapter, first verse. Then he says, Kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purushottama, adibhutam cha kim, proktam adidaivam kim uchyate, adi yajnaha katam ko atra dehe asmin madhusudanaha, prayana kale cha katam nyeyo asi niyatatmavihi. So that's what Arjuna is asking. What is all this? What is Adhyatmam? So what is Adibhutam? What is Adhyatmam? What is Adidaivam? What is Adi Yajnaha? What is Brahma? What is Karma? He is asking that question in the 8th chapter, first verse. And Krishna gives in the following 2 verses, 2nd verse and the 3rd verse, he summarizes the whole answers. He says, Sri Bhagavanu Vacha, Aksharam Brahma Paramam, Swabhavo Adhyatmam Uchyate, Bhuta Bhava Udbhava Karo Visargaha Karma Samnitaha Adibhutam Kshare Bhava Ksharo Bhavaha Purushashta Adidaivatam Adiyagno Aham Eva Atra Dehe Dehe Bhutam Varaha. So basically, beautiful set of 5 verses, which I think we should spend a lot of time thinking about it, because Purusha Sukta and any aspects, if you look at many Vedas, many Upanishads, there is all these discussions about creation and Panchabhutas and all these things come. And why is it important to know? Okay, Krishna is answering those in these 5 verses. 2 verses he has answered in chapter 7, and in the following 2 verses in chapter 8 with a question from Arjuna in the middle. So please read this as a homework for next week. Now, what is the essence of it? So let's go to the 29th verse. Te Brahma tad viduhu. Brahma is that supreme Lord, the supreme Brahman, as Shishruta said. So, Te Brahma tad viduhu, so that is God realization. Kritsnam adhyatmam. Okay, so Kritsna means the entire, everything, all encompassing. It's everything that needs to be known about it. He who knows that. Adhyatmam has got various meanings in Sanskrit. As you know, Atma can be body, Atma can be mind, Atma can be soul. Atma can also be the Supreme Lord. So there are 4 different meanings for Atma. It depends on the context. So here, Krishna is telling us about, the first 3 components. Know everything about the body, know everything about the mind, know everything about the self. If you have put everything together, then it becomes self-realization. Then the 3rd line, he says, the 3rd part, he says, Karma cha akilam. You should know everything about karma. What is karma? What is action? What is inaction? What is karma yoga and everything. So the complete knowledge of karma. So Krishna is saying these 3 things are essential. And then to know these things, he gives stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Stage 1 is it's a kindergarten level. So what we have been doing so far around all the tattvas is kindergarten stuff that Krishna is telling us that it is a must, that you should know. That is the material science about Brahmanda and Pindanda. Stage 2 is then you become more and more interested. So you say, okay, this Brahmanda is there, Pindanda is there. How does the Brahmanda work? How does the Pindanda work? What is inside this that makes it happen? And stuff like that. When you start asking those questions, then you go into the 2nd stage. That is non-material things. How do things operate? Then you start knowing about Abhimani Devas, for example. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the Vedic pantheon and how everybody is placed in the Vedic pantheon. And finally, you proceed then to a stage 3 of non-material science again, and then you have the God realization. So that is what we are doing. So on the right side, I've summarized Adibhutam, which is material science, which is about the Brahmanda and Pindanda. The first Varga is of the Purusha Sukta is talking about this. This is talking about how the Brahmanda comes and how the Supreme is pervading everything and so on. And then Pindanda, how it is going to come, it discussed in the Purusha Sukta. Now, Adhyatma, as I said, the body-soul complex that we need to understand. Adi Daivam, Devatas, Adi Yajnaha, Brahma and Karma. So these 6 components, the 6 that must be known in Vedic philosophy, is what Krishna is telling us in these verses. you got to know these things before you make spiritual progress. And that is what we have been doing over the past 4 weeks, actually applying the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. They are applying the teachings of Veda Vyasa / Krishna to actually a Vedic text. So moving on to the next slide. So this next slide is just to remind you all of what is Brahmanda and what is Pindanda. So Abhijit, if you could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So that is the overall assessment. I'm just reminding you there, the components of the Brahmanda and all the Abhimani Devatas of the Vedic pantheon. I've placed them all. And I've also said the same guys who have portfolios within the Brahmanda also have the portfolios in the Pindanda. And I've summarized those figures. Please do have a look at this. This is a PDF version that you've got. So move on to the next slide. So the next verse is the first rig. So let's just very briefly revise on the first rig. So what is the first rig? The first rig of the second varga said, Yat Purushena Havisha Devam Yajnam Matanvata Vasanto Asya Asid Ajyam Grishma Idmaha Sharad Havihi. So we discussed this and we spent a lot of time about this interesting concept of how the Nasadiya Sukta describes about the pre-creation stage of absolute time. When it says Nasadasin no Sadasi Tadanim, then. So that is absolute time where the past, the present, the future coexist in him simultaneously. Time is an everlasting present pre-creation. And how this particular Rik, when it talks about Vasantyo Asya Asidajam Grishma Idmaha and Sharad Havihi, it's a metaphor for how relative time starts and how time starts flowing from past to present to future. The future then becomes the present, and then the past, it continues. It's a continuous stuff. So that is relative time. And we had quite a lot of discussion. It opened up quite a lot of philosophical inquiry into what is time. Is it a substance? Is it an inference? Is it mithya? Is it an illusion? Is it a mental construct? So we discussed about all these interesting Vedic philosophical concepts. But the key there is, the first thing that came out when the creation started was the start of relative time. Yeah. So that was a key concept that we understood. And the other concept there is yajnam, deva yajnam. I want you to hold on to the concept of yajnam. What is yajnam? So we discussed that the yajna came from a root word called yaja. So yaja deva pujana, yaja sangati karana, yaja dhane. So that is worship of deities is yajana. So for example, you had Rath Yatra function today. So yajana in the morning. Yeah, we are doing a discourse. This is a yajana. This is also a yajna in the evening. So any form of worship is yajna. Not just throwing havis oblations into a fire sacrifice. Anything is a yajna. Sangati karana, where you get together and contemplate the that picture last time, you may remember. And charity, which is a key component of sacrificial, Agni, Homa and everything is charity, dhana. So they all form yajna. And I also told you actually in Parama Mukhya Vritti, as we call it, in the primary sense, Yajnam means Vishnu. Yajnam is an incarnation of Vishnu. Yajno vai Vishnuhu. Taittreya Aranyaka says that. 48th name of Vishnu in Vishnu Sahasranama is Yajnam. Chapter 9, Krishna is saying, Aham hi sarva yajnanam. Yeah, so all those things that we need to remember. Hold on to the concept of yajnam, because the second varga talks a lot about yajnam. Yeah, that yajna. So we have to understand in the context what that yajnam actually means. So moving to the next slide. So now, so Deva Yajnam Atanvata. So that verse then finished like Deva Yajnam Atanvata. So that was, we also said, look, this has to be a Manasa Yajna. So the Devatas who were all there, who had all then come into existence, they were all doing Manasa Yajna, because let's remind ourselves, this is a very early stage of creation. None of the Panchabhutas and things like that have not yet come into being. So at that stage, the Devas were doing mental contemplation. This is for the Devas. And as I said, the Vedic interpretations, there are three folds. One is Adi Deva interpretation. So this is the Adi Deva, how the Devatas were meditating about creation. But whenever we think about Adi Deva interpretation of the Vedas, we should also think about Adi Atma contemplation. For me, as a human being who's got a sadhana sharira here, what is this Rik telling me so that I can make spiritual progress? So that is another meaning that we need to extract. So that is called Adhyatma contemplation, which, as we discussed before, could be body, mind, jiva, or the supreme. Okay, and that becomes quite important. So moving on to the next slide, Abhijit. So relative time came into being. Yeah. So then what happened? So that is what the next Rik is saying. Saptasyasan paridayaha trishapta samidaha krutaha deva yad yajnam tanvanaha abadnan purusham pashun. So that is that particular Rik. So saptasyasan paridayaha trishaptaha samidaha krutaha deva yad yajnam tanvanaha abadnan purusham pashun. And for our benefit here, I've split it open. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of clarity here. So this seventh Rik that I have said here, it comes in the Yajurveda. So as Sushrut mentioned, every Purusha Sukta comes in all the Vedas. So in Yajurveda, it comes in the 3rd chapter in Taittiriya Aranyaka. It is the 12th Anuvak. And there, following the 6th verse, the 7th verse there is Saptasyasan Paridayaha. Okay. Whereas in the Rik Veda, and if you take the Rik Veda, it comes in the 15th Rik. Yeah. But the traditional teaching for the Purusha Sukta is usually you place this Rik here because it is contextually very relevant for our discussions. Okay. Now, interestingly, Taittiriya Aranyaka is a beautiful Aranyaka because 3rd chapter has got Purusha Sukta. If you take 7th, 8th, and the 9th chapter, it's Taittiriya Upanishad. It's one of those really important Krishna Yajurveda Upanishad. It's a beautiful Upanishad. Then you have the 10th chapter, which becomes a Mahanarayana Upanishad. So Taittiriya Aranyaka is set in very key, philosophical works are there in Taittiriya Aranyaka. So going back to our second Rik, so we have now split this open. I've got an image there of all these devas sitting together and doing a yajna. So in the Vedic view, the creation is an yajna. Yeah, the creation, how the creation came into being itself is a big sacrifice. It's a big yajna. That is the imagery of our Vedic philosophers to view creation itself as a yajna. Yeah, and this yajna was done by all the from Chaturmukha Brahma and other devatas. They were doing this yajna to bring creation into being. But let us not forget that inside all these devatas is the Antaryamin, who is Paramatman himself, who is actually controlling and making these devatas do all this. Yeah. So moving on to the next slide. So we are now going to go and tackle the first line. And so the first line is extremely complicated for contemplation, but I'll try and make it as palatable as it can be. So Abhijit, if we could move to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So as I said, this whole creation is an imagery. It's an imagery of primordial yajna. That is what this second varga is talking about. It says sapta. Sapta means what? 7. Yeah. Saptasyasan paridayaha. So that paridayaha is an interesting word and it's an important word. You split it into 2. Paridayaha means pari and di. Pari means all around. Yeah. It is something that is a fence like, some kind of a defense. So in all these national trust properties, you have these castles, and around the castle you have the moat. So that is a paridhi. Yeah. So placing that barriers, placing that fence. So this is a bit complicated. So it is saying saptasyasan paridayaha. So these devatas first put 7 barriers. When they started doing this yajna of creation, they started putting these barriers. Then it says 3 saptaha samidaha krutaha. Then it says 3 saptaha. 3 means 3, saptaha means 7. So 3 times 7 equals 21. So samidhi means what? Samidhi is the wood, the fuel, the oblation to the fire and firewood. I'm sure most of you would have done havan or some yajna in your house where you would have put some sticks into the fire. So that is called samidhi. Yeah. So it says that these devatas used 21 samidhis, that is 21 sticks, and they built 7 barriers around this yajna, and they started doing manasa yajna. Deva yat yajnam tanvanaham. So this is a very puzzling statement. And that is the language of the Vedas. So what I wanted to say here is, the language of the Vedas is full of imagery, full of metaphors, and full of numbers. And you have to go into those numbers and pick up what the essence there is. So this imagery is saying that the Devatas, all the Devatas who were involved in creation, sacrifice, and they put 7 boundaries and they threw 21 sticks. So what on earth are they talking about? So let's go to the next slide to understand what is it that they're talking about. So this is where I want to introduce you to the concept of the mathematics and geometry in Vedic fire altar construction. So next slide, Abhijit. Yeah, thank you. So this is a very brief slide so that for those of us who are not familiar with these concepts, you can go on Google or you can buy books. There are lots of books on this in Amazon, and Exotic India is a good place to buy. Motilal Banarsidas is a very good publisher in India where you can get all these books if you're interested. Yeah, so that is to talk about the Vedic fire altar and what is the mathematics and the geometry. Now, I want to inspire you in this. So this whole construction of the Vedic fire altar is called Agni Chayana. And there are some key books that are used to build this. So it's called Katyayana Sulbasutra and Baudhayana Sulbasutra. Those are the 2 works that gives you the geometry and mathematics of how you construct fire sacrifice altars. So what does that tell you? This is not a random act. You just don't go and dig some ground and start making fire and throw sticks into it. A whole lot of mathematics has gone into it, a whole lot of geometry. When I read this, I was just mesmerized and shocked. My God, there is so much geometry into this. The geometry that goes into it, I've just summarized a few things there. Now, it's the fire altars are of various shapes. It can be circle, it can be semicircle, it can be square, it can be a falcon shape. There are so many versions of that. But by and large, the fire altars symbolize the universe. Okay. The ones for earth is in circular shape, and the sky, the heavens is in the square shape. And there are so many geometrical problems our Vedic philosophers have resolved by this. So by constructing this altars, this is in ancient geometry, there are several concepts of, squaring a circle, circulature of a square. So these are all geometric concepts as to how you do that. And the fire altar construction is all based on that. It's all based on maths and geometry. Yeah, that is fed into our Veda Shastras. So I've given you 3 examples. The surface area has to be in direct proportion to the height of the individual whose task it is to construct the altar. This is to be a precise alignment of the altar with 4 points of the compass using a standing stone and observing the direction of the shortest shadow of each, which points due north. The fire altar is to point east of no more than 200 bricks, where the bricks are in whole number fractions and multiples of 1 out of 16 of a unit, and so on. And the surface area of each layer is to be 7.5 square Purushas, which is 120 square units. So it goes on, the mathematics and the minute details by which the fire altar is constructed is quite amazing. All sorts of subtle mathematics and trigonometry, pi comes into this equation quite a lot. Things that I don't understand because I'm not a mathematician, but when I read this, wow, it just blows me away that this is how fire altar was constructed. Now, I do not know whether practices happen here. I need to be reassured that they do this, but I'm pretty sure that they do this. And the second part of this, next time when you do the havans, when you do this, watch all this as to what your Purohit or Hotru is doing and how they are arranging all this. Please find out and try and do some research on this because it's really interesting. Why is the case and why have I spent 5 to 10 minutes to give you this kind of background? Because to understand the previous rig, to understand the rig, Saptasyasan Paridayaha, Trishapta Samidaha Krutaha, to understand that line, you actually need to have this background. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So now I'm going into what's called the anatomy and physiology of the Vedic sacrifice. We discussed maths and geometry. Now I'm going to spend a few slides talk about what is the anatomy and physiology. Some of us have medical background and I find it extremely interesting. So there are various fire altars in Vedic sacrifice. The most important ones tend to be Garhapatya, Ahavaniya, and Dakshinagni. So that is in the Agnishala. Then you have the Mahavedi, where you have the Uttaravedi, that is another fire altar. So for a classic Vedic sacrifice, two fire altars are very important. They're called Ahavaniya and Uttaravedi. And I have kind of highlighted that in this figure. So hold on to that idea. So Uttaravedi and Ahavaniya. So in the Vedic times, when these fire sacrifices were happening, even now fire sacrifices happens. For example, 2 years ago when I went to India, I did Pavamana Yajna. So it was a fire sacrifice for Pavamana from Rig Veda. It was amazing to have all this, 16 purohits and do this. It's quite magical. So it happens quite often in India. So you have Ahavaniya and Uttaravedi. Moving on to the next slide. So this is where our concept comes. So when it says Saptasyasan Paridayaha, seven boundaries. So when you do a Vedic sacrifice, a fire sacrifice, you build boundaries. So these boundaries are done with kusha grass, yeah, or it could be done with kusha grass around it. These are paridis are the fence around the fire altars to protect against evil influence. So that is the belief there, that you have this kusha grass, okay, facing north, south, and west. Ahavaniya, I've numbered this. 2, 3, and 4 kusha grasses around Ahavaniya. 5, 6, and 7 bunch of kusha grass against Uttaravedi. So these are all in north, south, and west. East, there is no barriers because the Vedic rishis felt that the Surya, who rises in the east, will provide that protection against evil influences when they do the fire sacrifice. So this is the paridhi. Yeah. So when the Rig says Saptasyasan Paridayaha, it is actually talking about this. It is using this imagery to describe how the Devas were doing Manasa Yajna during early phases of creation. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. So now the Manasa Yajna. So now the question is, what are the 7 barriers? What are the 7 protective barriers that the Devatas were doing when they started creations? Now it falls into place. We discussed, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago, about the chandas. We discussed about the various chandas of the Vedas. So the main chandas are 7. Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Bruhati, Pankti, Trishtup, Jagati. Yeah? 7 chandas. So what the Purusha Sukta is basically telling here is, and we discussed this before, Lord Vishnu in Hayagriva form teaches the Veda to Chaturmukha Brahma. Chaturmukha Brahma then teaches all the beings who come after him. That includes all the other big devatas, all the other chief devatas. So all these guys are learning about the Vedas. So when they do the Manasa Yajna, what they are doing is all that they have learned using these 7 chandas. The chandas is their protective barrier, because chandas, as we discussed before, chadayanti iti chandamsi, that which covers. That is the literal meaning of chandas, is that which covers and protects the Vedas is called chandas. So the Devas usually actually used 7 chandas, did their meditation on the Vedas, and with that knowledge, they started creating. So that is the imagery of the Vedic rishis, of the Saptasyasan Paridayaha. Okay. Now it gets even more interesting. Now, what is the origin of these chandas of the Vedas? If you go to Maha Aitareya, there is a very beautiful verse. Because Tasya Ushnik Lomani, Tvag Gayatri, Trishtup Mamsam, Anushtup Snavani, Asti Jagati, Pankti Majja, Prano Bruhati. So it says where actually these chandas and Vedas actually came from the body of the Supreme Being. It's amazing. So how these came from different parts of the Supreme Being itself, and that is then transferred to our mundane existence. So for example, Gayatri, it says, comes from the skin of the Supreme, And the Gayatri's Abhimani Devata is a Devi called Swaha Devi, who is Agni's consort. Similarly, Ushnik comes from Roma, and the Abhimani Devata is Samnya Devi. Then nerve bundles of the Supreme is where Anushtuk comes, and then that's Rohini. And then you have Tara, then Asikna and Ganga, then you have Sachi. So these are all key Devis, and they are the consorts of the Devatas that are contemplated as well in our day-to-day Chandas recitation of the Vedas. This is quite an important concept. The reason why I say that is, and this is for all our lady friends who are there in the audience, there is a perception that somehow Vedas and Upanishads are out of bounds for women. That is far from truth. Look at the Chandas Abhimani Devatas. The Chandas Abhimani Devatas are all consorts. They are all wives of Agnis, Mitra, Varuna, and so on. Okay, so basically now we understand when the Rig says Saptasyas and Paridayaha, it is thinking about how these Devatas learned the Vedas and they used the 7 Chandas as the Paridis and started doing Manasa Yajna about the Supreme Being himself. So moving on to the next slide. So that is all well and good. Abhijit, next one. So that is all well and good for the Manasa Yajna of Devatas. So now again, as I said, when you have that kind of imagery and the language of the Vedas, you should immediately think about what is Adhyatma. How is this relevant to me? How am I going to apply this for my day-to-day living? And it's beautiful. The teaching there is, when you take the Adhyatma version of this, it says, you know what, your body is a sacrificial place. The heart, where the Supreme Being is, that is the Kunda, that is the fire altar. And then you have various coverings of your body. Okay? The philosophy there are so many 7s in Vedic philosophy, and there are some key 7 concepts that we need to grasp. There are the 7 chakras. The 7 chakras that we use, starting from Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, Agnya, and Sahasrara. So these are your 7 chakras. Those are your barriers. Those are your protective things. And use those barriers. Contemplate, do yajna on the Supreme who is in your heart for your progress. So that is one version. There are 7 endocrine glands, as most of you will be familiar with. Each endocrine gland corresponds to a particular chakra. You have the gonads, you have the adrenal glands, you have the islets of Langerhans, you have thymus, you have thyroid, you have pineal gland, and then the pituitary. They all correspond to each aspect of the chakras. Then the 7 dhatus, the dhatus of Ayurveda, the various, the skin, the muscles, the nerve bundles, the bone marrow, the prana, everything. So the philosopher is saying, consider your body as a fire sacrifice. These are your 7 boundaries, 7 chakras, 7 endocrine glands, 7 dhatus. Your body is covered by 7 layers. That is your protective barrier. Okay. And again, you contemplate the Supreme. How? You contemplate the Supreme with Vedas. How do you read the Vedas? 7 key chandas. How many vital forces are in your body? There are 5 primary vital forces. We are all familiar with Prana, Apana, Samana, Udana, and Jnana. But there are also 5 subordinate forces. So they have various names. 2 of them are key. They're called Devadatta and Dhananjaya. So these 7 form the 7 vital forces. Now your body is made of what? Akasha, Vayu, Tejas, Aprithvi. And then you have Maha, and your mind is what? Ahankara and Mahat. So these 7 sources of transaction, they are also the 7s. So the philosopher there, the philosophy there in that one line is that we do Adhyatma contemplation of the Supreme, use our heart as a kunda, and we have 7 barriers at various levels, which this Rik is talking about. So moving on to the next line. Now this is very interesting. This Manasa Yajna that I was talking to you about how the heart should be considered as the kunda. Chandogya Upanishad actually talks about this. It says, Barhi Hrudayam Garhapatya Mano Anvaharya Pachana Asyam Ahavaniya. So these are the 3 kundas that we talked about. That is Garhapatya, Dakshinagni, and Uttaravedi. So these are all the 3 yajnas, that the 3 kundas that is talking about. And the philosopher there in Chandogya Upanishad saying, these 3 kundas are in 3 places in your body itself. Where are they? One is your heart. That is where the Garhapatya kunda is. Where is the Ahavaniya? It's in your mouth. Then in your mind is the Anvaharya Pachana. So these are the 3 major kundas of your body. And it says, use these kundas when you conduct affairs of your life. And use the 7 bound barriers, which is your body alone, for the contemplation of the Supreme. Whatever action that you do in this life, do it as a sacrifice. Because of, do it as a sacrifice as how the Devas did. Saying if the Devas can do creation, which is such a big task, and they do this as a yajna, as a dedication to the Supreme Lord, why can't us as mundane human beings who are not even a dust in the overall scheme of the universe, why are we not dedicating our daily lives as a sacrifice to the Supreme? I think we need to ask that question. And that, as you know, is the foundational question of the Bhagavad Gita, of asking us to do the karma yoga and everything else as a dedication to the Supreme. If you have this kind of imagery of the Purusha Sukta, you can directly apply and translate this into when you're doing your Gita studies, and then try and practically apply this in your daily life. Now, all that I am saying is theory. Unless we put it into practice, we will never get the benefits of that. Okay, so that is the Saptasyasan Paridayaha. So imagine we are just with the number 7. There is so much philosophy that goes into just that number 7 in that particular rig. So whilst I take a couple of minutes break, I just had a quiz. This is an important quiz. Is why do Hindus cremate the dead? Sorry, Abhijit, stay on the same line. One question. So I've spoken so much about this fire sacrifice and so on. So why do Hindus cremate the dead? Has anybody thought about this? Can I have an answer for that, please?
Is it because fire purifies everything?
Yeah, that's good. So that purifies everything. So you're burning that way. Yeah, that's one answer. Yeah. Any other opinions?
Madhu, I think the time of the cremation is very important. As soon as the soul is, the person is dead, we have to cremate him within a number of hours, within 6 or 7 hours, because the soul leaves the body, and on his journey, I was told that sometimes it comes back within that period of time, and if the body is not cremated before then there may be some problems for the soul's journey.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Madhu?
Yeah, please.
I think, as we all know, that the soul is immortal and the body is mortal. And having been attached to the body since since inception till death, that's a great attachment, isn't it? So when you cremate it, the body can't, the soul can't have any connection to the body. And that is a realization that the soul is immortal and the body is mortal. That's what I think.
Okay, thank
Madhu,
you.
I actually had a question. Sorry, Madhu, I actually had Bindu here. I had a question with this. Not an answer, just a question. While we Hindus cremate bodies, we also bury some bodies, like the Swamijis are put in a samadhi. They are not cremated. So why are there different rules? There must be a reason.
Yes, yeah. So thanks, Bindu, for that question. So I think we will deal with this right now. So any other opinions on this? So it's interesting. We got a diverse view on why Hindus cremate the dead.
Madhu, is it because you are offering you're offering the whatever remains are there back to where it came from? So it's fire as a mode of returning, in the sense that taking it back to its origin.
Yeah. Thank you for that. May I know who contributed to that? Is it Rajesh or is it Kishore?
This is Suresh, Madhu.
Suresh,
I want to say, extension to Rajesh, what Rajesh said, it's the Antya Ishti. Ishti, as we know, Antya Ishti. It's called samskara. Antya Ishti samskara. So that is part of the whole process of our living and death, is part of the life cycle in a way. So the last yajna that the body does is the Antya Ishti.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Excellent. So, it's so nice to have different diverse views as to why we have the Hindu cremation. Okay. Now I'll give you another version of this. See whether it now makes logical sense.
Can I have a go before you go?
Yeah. Yeah. They will. Yeah. Of course.
So I think fire can destroy in the 5 elements. Fire can destroy water and earth and sorry, I don't know what the last one is, but obviously then it will go in ether. So only when so you destroy the way it is created, that so the fire will then go on into ether. So you've uncreated it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I get where you're coming from. So yeah, so thank you for all that contribution. So here is a version purely from Vedika, purely from what the Vedas are saying. Because I spoke to you so much about all the fire sacrifice so far, I'm in the beginning of the fire sacrifice philosophy. So how does this whole fire sacrifice happens? In the Vedic times, and I still know there are many people I know in America who do this. And there are many people in England who do this, and there are lots of people in India who do this, who are grihasthas. So in a grihastha household, you might have heard about something called Agnihotra. Have you heard of Agnihotra? Okay. So Agnihotra is the daily fire sacrifice that every grihastha has to do. Okay, of worshipping the Supreme in the form of Agni Narayana. Yeah. So in the ancient times, all grihasthas, so childhood, they've been playing around. Then they've gone, then they're brahmachari, they've gone to Gurukula. They have read about the Vedas, samskaras, as Kishorji pointed out. They've read about all these things. And then they come back after their Gurukula. As soon as they come back, they've had a child marriage before. They go to Gurukula, come back, and then they become grihasthas. And the husband and wife, they're running a household. So at that time, we are looking at Vedic times. At that time, what they used to do is, if you are a grihastha, every day you will do Agnihotra. That is a must, to do Agnihotra, which is the fire sacrifice ritual to pray the Supreme as Agni Narayana in Agni. Vedas, everywhere in the Vedas you will find there are only 3 forms of worship, and done by 3 types of souls based on the capacities. The mundane ones like us, who live in this material world on earth, the prescription for us is to worship the fire as Agni. Agni as a chief form of worship. And that would resonate with so many other philosophies in the world. You know, you have the Zoroastrianism, which focuses on fire. You have the Judean tradition, which also focuses on fire. So in the Vedic tradition, fire is the chief form of worship as Agnihotra that is done every day. Okay, so the guys are doing Agnihotra. Now, if you are doing a big fire ritual, some people who can afford, who are prosperous, then what they will do is on a yearly basis, they will do a big yajna. And they'll build a yajna shala, they'll build yajna, and that will support a lot of philosophers who will come. Food is given, the dana is given, and it's a big activity that happens. Mundaka Upanishad, for example, it talks about yajna shala and so on. Saunaka, for example, was a big yajna shala. He used to have big yajna shala and cater to big yajnas and feed the people, and he give charity and so on. So when you are doing such yajna, what you will do is, every day you're doing that Agnihotra with that samidhis, you're throwing that stick. The rules there is that every day samidhi that you're putting into Agnihotra, that will be used as a matchstick to light the fire altar of big yajnas that will happen, like, I don't know, Ashwamedha, for example. I'm just picking it out of the blue. So for that, you will use the stick from the Agnihotra into that yajna. Okay, so that Agnihotra for a Grihastha is extremely important because he has run his whole life doing Agnihotra. Now, the next verse you will find Abadnan Purusham Pashun. There is a verse next line, and that is quite relevant here. Because then what happens is you go through your life and one day you die. So Abaddan Purusham Pashun. So you are, when you're doing your Agnihotra every day, you are offering all the the samidhis you're offering havis into the Agnihotra. One day when you die, the philosophy there is you offer your body in which you are into that fire sacrifice. Yeah. So that is the sequence as to you do Agnihotra, everyday Agnihotra, that stick of Agnihotra goes for Yajna, that stick of the Agnihotra, then final one day you offer your own body into that Yajna and you are finished and you take another birth. So that is the deep that one way in which why his over from the Vedic times, Hindus have always cremated the dead. Now, Bindu asked a very important question that people who are sannyasis, they are buried, they are not burnt. There is your answer. Sannyasis are not grihasthas. Sannyasis have given up grihasthashrama. They take formal renunciation of everything and they become sannyasis. So for sannyasis, they don't have Agnihotra on a daily basis. They do not do Agnihotra on a daily basis. Sannyasis, they just contemplate Om meditation. That is their contemplation and their yajna. And that is the reason why sannyasis do not have a cremation. If you are a sannyasi, you don't have a cremation, you are buried. But if you are a grihastha, you are cremated, assuming you have done Agnihotra on a daily basis. And the same stick that you have done is used to final offering of yourself into the yajna and give it to the Supreme. You have brought me into this world. Come on, take it. Take my body also. As you know, one of the big things as to why we do Agni sacrifices, fire is seen as that medium that talks between the transempirical and the empirical. So that communication with the transempirical world is believed to happen through the fire. And that is the philosophy behind this. I hope you find it interesting because this is a key concept for the Hindus of Agnihotra and worshipping the fire. Because Agni is the primary mode of worship on earth. For rishis, the primary mode of worship is Surya. Yeah, Surya Mandala Narayana through Gayatri. So that is for the rishis. But for the devatas and the higher exalted beings, it is the all-pervasiveness of the Brahman that is worship. So these are all things that come in various Upanishads and Vedas. You can do the reference. But I just thought that this cremation bit is important when you're talking about the Manasa Yajna that happened on creation. We also have to take that yajna in our daily life. Next slide, Abhijit. So the 7 types of flames. Now you will find, now I'm moving to so we have discussed mathematics and geography of fire. Then we discussed about the anatomy and physiology of a fire sacrifice and how our body is a fire sacrifice. Now let me take to the greatness of our Vedas, our Vedic philosophy. Let me take you to some physics of Vedas. So this is very interesting. In Mundaka Upanishad, for example, there is a discussion on, in the fire sacrifice, what are the types of flames? Okay, so the rishis describe 7 types of flames that come out in the Agni. They're called Kali, Karali, Manojava, Sulohita, Sudomuravarna, Sulingi, and Vishwaruchi. Interesting if you want to remember, but I don't want to remember that, but just that 7 is interesting. 7 types of flames. So this is called Sapta Jihvaha. Jihva means tongue. And this is so beautiful metaphor. It says each flame is like a tongue. So there are 7 types of tongue in fire. And look at our observations of our Vedic rishis. If you go to Rig Veda, if you go to the 4th mandala, it talks about Surya. And it says Saptaha Yahvihi. And it says the Surya has got 7 types of rays. And that is the reason why the Surya is always depicted with 7 horses. He has 7 horses because he's got 7 different types of rays. Now, what is the visible spectrum? The visible spectrum has got 7. He's got 7 different colors. And what our Vedic philosophers have done is each color is matched with the list that I've given. The colors match with each spectrum on the visible spectrum of light. You will also find ultraviolet rays actually being described in our Vedas and the Upanishads, talking about ultraviolet and infrared spectrum. That also comes in the Vedas. I always wonder as to how these guys picked up this information. But I thought in the context of the fire sacrifice, it is important because the Saptasyas and Paridayaha should make you think about all the sevens that you know in Vedas. We talked about in Chandas, and we've come all the way here. Now we've talked about physics. Now, one other thing I haven't talked about is maybe something one of the friends could contribute next time is Sapta Rishis. There are Sapta Rishis that come in each Manvantaras. There are Sapta Rishis of various types that are discussed as well. So that is also a key philosophical concept. So moving on to the next slide. So now, thank God, we are moving to the second half of the first line of the seventh rig. Tri Saptaha Samidaha Krutaha. So what is this 21 that reminds? So we all these 7 paridis and 7 boundaries, and we did how the devas do and how the bodies do. What does the 21 actually denote? So when you look at the creation aspect from the Devata's perspective, this encompasses the whole of the universe. It encompasses everything from the galaxies to the solar systems to the sun. Why? 12 denotes the 12. So the 21, how did the number 21 came about? As we discussed in the first rig, relative time came and the various seasons and everything was illustrated to give you an idea of time. Now that idea is progressed a bit further. So you take 12 months, you take 5 ritus. Where are these 12 months and 5 ritus? In 3 realms of existence. So you can have Bhur, Bhuva, Suvaha. So there are various ways of looking at it. You can either say 3 or you can say 14. 3 is a common way of looking at it. So Bhur, Bhuva, Suvaha is the division of the whole of existence. And then our Vedic rishis have seen, so look, you have the universe. The universe is full of galaxies. Galaxies have a lot of solar system. And in each solar system, there will be a sun, a star of some type. And you will have planets that revolve around it. And the time as we have in this solar system, which this sun, this is our concept of time. 12 months, 5 ritus, 3 realms, 12 months and 5 ritus. If you go to another solar system where there will be another sun or other planets going around, you will have a different kind of scale, but you still have seasons, you still have months and so on. That is a view of the Vedic rishis. So by including this 21, they're actually telling us about the universe, the galaxies, the solar system, and each solar system has 1 star, Aditya. So if you add that, that is 21. So that is telling you about how when this creation was happening, galaxies and solar systems come about. Now there is also another version of the number 21 is the various tattvas that we have talked about, the 24 tattvas, but the 21 is taken in this version. Prakriti, the 3 gunas, Mahat Tattva, Ahankara Tattva, Pancha Tanmatras, Pancha Bhutas, and Jnana Indriyas, they together form the 21. Now here it gets a little bit more complicated because our devas have received that knowledge directly from Chaturmukha Brahma, that they know they know the Vedas not just in 7 chandas. There are actually 21 chandas for Vedas. So that 21 then also becomes the 21 chandas of the Vedas. Now moving on to the next slide. So immediately when you think about how devas are doing, you should think about what about for me as a Manushya? How do I care what devas are doing? For us, how do we do our yajna? How do we submit ourselves to the Supreme? Yes, we will use 21 chandas of the Vedas to know about the Supreme. And I've actually listed all the 21 chandas. And on the left, what do we do to make our contributions? We use a Karma Indriya, Jnana Indriya, Panchabhuta, Pancha Pranas, and Manas to run our daily affairs. So that becomes a 10. And from a much more superficial point of view, when we do our Ashtanga Namaskar, you can contemplate 10 fingers, 10 toes, and 1 head. They're all down. So that is how you contribute. That 21 for us should bring all these ideas into our consideration. So moving on to, we are almost coming to the tail end of it. So now, Deva yad yajnam tanvanaha abadnan purusham pashun. So let's think about the last line, abadnan purusham pashun. Badnan means to tie. Purusham, Pashun means an animal. So if you look at Vedic sacrifice, we'll dwell about this next week about what are the various Vedic sacrifice, was there animal sacrifice, what type of animal sacrifice in the Vedic times, then how did it change? It's really interesting. So in that concept, the imagery there is Pashu is that the cow that I've drawn that is tied through a rope to a pillar. The pillar is the Prakriti. The rope is Vishnu's instruction to create. And each Deva uses his own body, Mahatattva, Ahankara Tattva. They donate their own body into this creation. So this is called Purusha Meda, like Ashwamedha. This is called Purusha Meda. And whom do they worship? They worship this Yajnam. And as I said before, Yajnam means supreme also. Yajnam can also mean the sacrifice. Now, there is also one interesting word called Purusham Pashun. So Purusham Pashun means it is also hinting us about the Supreme who is in the form of an animal and who is also in the form of a human being. So I take 1 minute break. I want people to tell me who is that form of the Supreme, or what are the forms of the Supreme that has got both Pashu and Purusha. Please.
Narasimha.
Very good. Narasimha and Hayagriva. Yeah, Hayagriva is horse and the human form, and Narasimha is lion and human form. So there is also a hint there that these devatas were also worshipping the Supreme in that form, because let's not forget, Hayagriva form is the one that gave Vedas to Chaturmukha Brahma, and that Hayagriva form is a Purusham Pashun. It's a combination of an animal form, what looks like an animal form, and a human form. So interesting ideas in that particular verse. So moving on to the next slide. This is my final slide for today before we go to other bits. So what is it telling us? Saptasyasan paridayaha trishapta samidaha kritaha deva yad yajnam tanvanaha abadnan purusham pashun. So it is telling you about the surrender. It is telling you about how the devas during creation are submitting themselves for this big act of creation, and how we as human beings submit whatever I do in our lives as a devotion, as a dedication to the Supreme. So surrender is the key concept that comes out from the second rig. This is, in fact, is the essence of Vedic philosophy. In Gita, for example, it talks about two types of surrenders. One is you surrender to your teacher, and the second one is you surrender to the Supreme. Surrender to your Guru is your route to surrendering you to your Supreme. There is no other way around it. Gita talks about this. Chapter 34th verse is beautiful. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashyena sevaya. Please bow to him, ask him question, and so on. Who are they? Upadekshanti te jnanam jnanenaha tattva darshinaha. He who knows true knowledge is the real Guru, and he will give you that knowledge. How? You do so that word is nice. Pranipatena. Pranipatena means Ashtanga Namaskar. You completely surrender to him. That is one. Pariprashnena. Once you've surrendered, you're showing your enthusiasm. Ask questions A to Z. Right, left, and center, you ask him questions. Don't leave him. Pariprashnena. And you do seva to him. That is one way of surrender. And then, of course, in the 18th chapter, Krishna gives the final solution. Sarva dharman parityagya mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shujaha. Yeah. He says, forget about when he says sarva dharma parityagi means, it doesn't mean that you give up all work. What he means there is, give up all the work with phala. Okay, do karma yoga. Dedicate it to me. But leave those types of work that you do for your own selfish need. Get rid of it. Sarva dharma parityagi, and then surrender to him. So these are all the things, concepts that come in. And what I want to reiterate is, one should not read any aspect of the Vedas or the Upanishads on its own. We have to go back to our Prasthana Traya. We have to take our Sutra Prasthana, we have to take our Gita Prasthana, and we have to take our Upanishad Prasthana, which is part of the Vedas. Anyway, put this all together and apply and start moving vertically and horizontally to try and grasp various concepts that these rishis are telling us. Okay, so that is where I'm going to finish for today. I'm sorry, this was a complicated rig, but it is one of the most beautiful rigs of Purusha Sukta. It's the 7th rig, which gives you all this subtle knowledge, and we should apply in our practical lives. So what I want to do is, as Reguji mentioned last time, which I think was a great idea, is we move on to, I think we should every week, when we finish the contemplations on Vedas and Upanishads, we should finish off with a Shanti mantra. So this week we have Dr. Neeta Kulkarni, who has volunteered to do a Shanti mantra today. And next week, I would want another person to contribute as well, please. So, Neeta Kulkarni, it's yours. So now, before I go, this is where we are. We discussed about next slide, Abhijit. So, whilst Neeta Kulkarni is getting ready, the previous slide. So when Neeta ji is getting ready, so far we discussed relative time. Now the material universe is coming into being. Now the next aspect is evolution of living beings. So that is what the next following rigs are going to talk about. This is really interesting. We talked about Darwinian evolution, Neo-Darwinism about 3-4 months ago. So what will be nice is actually to apply all these concepts in this Purusha Sukta rig and try and make some progress next week. I want to do 2 or 3 rigs if I can next week. So thank you for listening. I'll pass on the mic, iPad to Neeta Kulkarni. Neeta, thank you very much.
Okay. Next slide. Okay. Thank you, Madhu. That was very, very interesting. And thanks for this opportunity. I have put the Shanti mantra there. So maybe everyone can chant to themselves, keeping it mute or joining in. We've all heard this Shanti mantra before, I'm sure. So let's chant it first and then we will take it forward. Purnamudachyate
Purnamadaya
avashishyate.
Purnamevavashishyate.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Next slide.
Next slide. It was a very interesting learning point for me to study about the Shanti mantras. I'd heard them, but I did not know more that there are different Shanti mantras in different Vedas. This particular Shanti mantra is from Shukla Yajurveda. You might remember from Madhuji's slides from Purusha Sukta first slide, first talk that he did, that he had shown us about Rig Veda, Yajurveda, and in Yajurveda there's Shukla Yajurveda and Krishna Yajurveda. So this is from Shukla Yajurveda, and the principal Upanishads in this one are Ishavasya Upanishad and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So you've also heard about Ishavasya Upanishad many times. It's one of the main Upanishads and the shortest Upanishads. I have put the meaning of this there. You can all read the meaning, but the important thing is, let's talk about Purna Madat. One comes from Purna, that is Purna, and this is Purna. So let's take 2 examples. One is infinity. So what happens when we add infinity to infinity? Anyone? It's still infinity. And what happens when we divide infinity by infinity?
Infinity.
Infinity. So the same thing holds true. You take away infinity, it still stays infinity. You multiply, it still stays as infinity. So that's it stays infinite even if you take even after taking away some part of it or part of infinity. So that is what it is. And also another good example is a lamp. So if you take a diya and put one diya to another diya or another lamp, so the first lamp does not lose its brightness. It continues to be bright, and you can continue lighting many lamps and they'll still have more, they'll still have the same brightness. Okay. Interesting point, as Madhuji was mentioning, number 7. I was counting the number of Purnas in this mantra. Actually, there are 7 Purnas in this mantra. So yes, Madhu?
That's really interesting. They're excellent. Yeah, that's a great.
I just thought there are so many Purnas, so let's see how many Purnas are there, and that is what I found. But again, it's just interesting. So much to learn from these little, from the mantras we have known, we have recited. but we did not know the meanings. I still don't think I understand all of it completely. Next slide, please. Abhijit. Right. Now, again, just to summarize a bit, Shanti word comes from 3 words, Sham, Anta, and E. Okay. Sham means bliss or inner bliss, and Anta or end or Purna, and E is to go or move towards knowledge. So E means knowledge. So the person who is full of knowledge, or what we call as Jnanananda Purna. So that is what Shanti means. Okay. Now, again, going back, there's a question here, which Madhuji had already answered in the very first lecture that he did on Gayatri Mantra and Om. So why do we say the word Shanti 3 times? Anyone?
Why? It's the present, future, and the past, or body, mind, and spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Any other explanations?
The 3 lokas, I mean, the present, the Pitraloka, and so yes.
That's right, 3 lokas. Anyone else? How many Vedas are there? The 3 principal Vedas? Yeah, so it's the Lord in all forms, in all the forms of Vedas, the 3 Vedas, 3 lokas, 3 kriyas, and also 3 kalas. So it represents all this in 3 different ways, or all the rupas of the great Lord. So with that, I would like to end and say Shri Krishnarpanamastu.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neeta ji. So I think we have come to the final bits of the session. So I don't know if Sudarshan is around. So if there are any questions or any other discussions, we have a few minutes. Oh, thank you, Sudarshan. So if there are any questions to discuss, I think we should all.
Yeah. Madhu, one query, Madhu. 1 minute. Madhu, query, Madhuji. This is with regards to cremation. So if one is going, if one knows that one is going to go into fire sacrifice, being cremated, but then at some point realizes that he wants to sacrifice his body for research or hospital, where does this soul goes then? I mean,
so this,
in terms of are you there?
Yeah. So that's it. Thank you. That's a good question. So at the end of the day, the soul has left already. So this is what you have is a dead body. That's it. And any type of dedication, just because you dedicate into a fire, is one form of dedication. But if you want to give it to medical science, that is also another form of dedication. And people donate their eyes, they donate their organs, and so on. Everything is part of a donation. Is a part of dedication. Yajna is about dedication. It's about surrender. It can be into a fire, or it could be into any other process. So I think that would be. And I've asked this question to very learned scholars, and they've said that is also a form of dedication. So that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Couple of things, Madhuji.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the session. Actually, regarding the Purnam mantra, the Shanti mantra, this is what I've learned like 10 years ago. We know the Chin Mudra. Chin Mudra, while we do meditation, if you can see me, I don't know. Like Lord Ayyappa also has this Chin Mudra. So we form a circle.
Your image is completely upside down for some reason. I don't know whether it's for me, for everybody.
Oh, sorry, no. I think my phone. I think okay. Yeah, Chin Mudra is this. Can you see me? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Chin. That is actually this is the Purnatva. This is again Purna. But zero, we call it Shunya. But the other meaning of the zero is Purna. We can see that also. So these 3 fingers represent the Sattva, Tamas, Rajogunas, and that is the Jivatma. this finger is Jivatma and this is the Paramatma. So this Jivatma with the Abhyasa, practice and all that, has to bend itself down and to touch the Paramatma. That becomes Purnatva. So you become Purnatva. You are part of that Purnatva then. So that's another not definition or a meaning of Purnatva in a way, in Mudras language.
Very nice. So, Kishorji, I've also learned a version of this mudra that we put. So on the right hand you have, and when you do japa and when you're doing meditation, you do both hands like this.
Yeah.
So the first one is kama, krodha, lopa, jnana, bhakti, vairagya on the other side. So if you want to, first three things that needs to go is kama, krodha and lopa, that needs to go. And then you need to have jnana, bhakti, vairagya on the other side. Unless you have jnana, bhakti, vairagya, there is no way in which your index finger is going to join the thumb or meet the thumb in salvation. It's not going to happen. So that's also, so thank you. That's very interesting.
So that, all these three fingers represent many other, as you said. The other thing I want to mention or ask is that the Purusham Pashum. So when we mentioned about the Purusham Pashum, Pashum, as we thought, is an animal, but Pashum is something which can be tied with a Pasham. That is, that which gets tied with the Pasham is called Pashu. So Pasham is that is what the Yamaraja holds, which has the mortality, which has the mortality. So even human beings are, as we call it ourselves animals, we are just nothing but social animals. So we can interpret in that way also. Is it possible? Is it right in a way to interpret in that sense?
Absolutely. I think as you said, the verses in the Vedas are so elastic that you can grasp and take so many meanings out of this, and any meaning that helps us in our progress is extremely welcome. So in fact, one of my gurus used to say is, every time you look at the verses in the Vedas, new meaning should come to you, because that is the greatness of the Vedic mantra. So they can pick so many concepts. Thank you very much for that. That's really nice.
We have the Pashupatinath temple also in Nepal. So Pashupati means like not just animals but for others. That's another example. Yeah. Thanks, Mataji. Thank you.
I think, Madhu, every week the talk is becoming more complex and interesting, and I think it's also involving a lot of people, and so it's a sort of everybody's sort of getting into the flow now, actually. So I was just wondering, because of the holiday time coming and in August or something, because the government guidelines have said, it's all, some of the holiday homes are open, and whether we can have a retreat somewhere, not so far. We could all meet physically. Well, everybody stays in individual accommodation, but we all meet in a common room or even outside and have this discussion like the Vedic times.
Good idea.
Yeah. I'm all game for that, as long as the situation on the ground is under control. Because I don't know, to be honest, how things are going to be over the next 4 to 6 weeks. It seems to be fine, but Sudarshan, I'm fully game for that. But see how it goes.
Yeah, at least it's like a retreat, Vedic retreat. But that's been in my mind for some time. But again, let's see. I think we have to go with how the lockdown has sort of if it has changed the situation or and everything. Actually, we'll go to today's lecture. Any questions from anybody?
And Madhuji, I just want to share something. You spoke about the chakra, and it's amazing that in Reiki, we do this chakras, and so I know where it's originated from. So yeah, just like everything is precipitated, all the research across the board, and even there's no smoke without fire. So I know where Usui got. Yeah. So that's why I always
Thanks.
Sound chakra. Thank you.
Yeah, the other one observation I want to make is, if you heard about our indigenous system of medicine, the Ayurveda, it is based on what Madhuji has said, like, this whatever we do, our sacrifice and everything, rituals, it is based on the principles of universe and how we are connected. In the same way, our Ayurvedic system, the indigenous system believes that, like in Tamil we say, Andathil ullade pindam, pindathil ullade andam. That means the macrocosm is in your microcosm, in our body. And so any changes in the macrocosm affects us, and vice versa, actually. So a lot of the medicines and everything is based on the, given based on this principle. And so if you read Ayurveda, you will understand this. It's all very much interconnected. So everything has been put into your day-to-day life. That's what I wanted to observe.
Yeah. Thank you, Sudarshan. That Sapta Dhatu is a Ayurvedic concept, isn't it? The Sapta Dhatus that come, and it's so relevant to our our medical practice that we do as well. It's just that we don't think that way.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
I mean, I just want to add what Sudarshan ji said. The Saptadhatus thing. There's one speech by Dr. John Heglin. I don't know if you know that person. He's a physicist, basically, Vedic physicist in a way. So he connects this unified field and these Saptadhatus links to Ayurveda also. It's an interesting watch, actually. I can forward the link if anybody is interested.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Please share it.
Yeah, and Madhu, other thing is, I think at some point we need a talk or lecture by you, because we learned a lot of theory, but we need to know. Before that, I'll ask people all this about 18 people still present in the group now. There were 24 initially when started with. So how these lectures have made any change in your life in the past, 8 weeks or even more? Because we started in the first week of April, isn't it? Since the lockdown began, nearly it's April, May, June, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, 3.5 months. So anybody, if you can say if this, listening to the lectures has made any changes in your life, or you made some changes in your personal life, anybody can sort of say anything?
Sudarshan, can I go first?
Yeah.
So the change that has made is I really I look forward to Sundays to just share and have this interactive discussion. So number one, mind is focused and I'm not looking and thinking all sorts of unnecessary things. I can't remember when was the last time I've actually watched TV or news. Over the last 3 months, I've stopped watching news. I would rather spend time getting some slides done together. So that way my mind is focused a lot. So that is my feeling over the last 3 months.
Oh, that's brilliant. Brilliant, Bas. Brilliant. Next, anybody else? I think if even all of you can say something, a few words.
I think I echo what Madhuji said. More focused now. And as you know, I'm not a Brahmin, and to get into Veda, which I knew only the name Veda and Upanishad. And when I was sent to India, I knew about it. And I'm not embarrassed to share that. And you have enlightened me, and I'm sharing it with my family members, and because we are doing Gita as well, everything is connected. And Sudarshan, I now every night I look at small snippets in the YouTube with regards to Veda and Upanishads, and I was so thrilled. Last week I was not in the class, and I was so happy when Madhuji mentioned about the Surya Siddhartha, because I knew about it 2 weeks back. So amazing. God bless you. I think COVID has made us, given us some negative, but it's abundance of positivity. We are looking inside and within. It's mind, spirit, and soul. Thank you, Madhuji and Sudarshan.
Yeah. Okay. Others here, please. Everybody, can you say something?
If I can add as well, so it's Nandish here. So
yeah, please go.
Yes, no, I think it's helped me immensely, not just in personal life and family life, because we've all been going through this uncertainty, but also in business as well. So as an entrepreneur, we have faced various challenges, and it's helped me to calm down and to how to sort of approach business as well, which you'll find actually I find very fascinating, and also helping in my understanding of some of the physics concepts, to see that our Vedic philosophers were so far ahead of what we seem to know now. So hats off to Madhu. So he's put all his efforts and all and helped us to grow in a way, so as an individual and as a businessman and as a person. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madhu.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Others, please. Yeah, everybody say a few words at least.
Well, it's been a very useful exercise, Madhu and Sudarshan. What you should have learned when you are 17, you're trying to learn when you're getting 70. But I feel it might keep our mind occupied, and doing some exercise is very useful, I think.
Yeah, at this time, yeah, it's very important to, keep the mind in a better thing. Yeah. Yeah, and it has helped me a lot, Sudarshan. Even though I was in the same field, technically I didn't know anything. So when Madhuji explains it technically, I really like it, because that way we can prove that, whatever we are saying. Otherwise, when Madhuji said, you have to be firm and you have to realize, yeah, it's right.
Good, brilliant. Kishore Dattu.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, excuse me, because I only joined a couple of sessions, but even that sessions have really enriched my knowledge on Purusha Suktam. I learned Purusha Suktam actually, but the chanting, by phone. I was calling somebody in India, and half an hour every day we used to spend chanting and all that. But I did not know the meanings of in a complete, very deep. So thanks to Madhuji, he's given a lot of exposure to that, what I've learned. So very much thankful.
Oh, thank you very much. And
can I go?
Navi.
This table here. I think I would like to make 2 points. One is the timing of starting of these lectures could not have been better planned. I think if one wants something, universe makes it happen, and I do believe in that quite strongly. And that is when it happened, and it has been a mind saver. Second point I wanted to make is that it's about discipline. So I think 2 things in Hinduism is about Sanyam and Niyam. And that applies to, sorry, I'm a psychiatrist by background, so that applies to psychotherapy. So having a dedicated time and space, which is a safe space, which is there every week, has a therapeutic effect on, on your psychos. And that's what these lectures are for me.
Brilliant. Thank you. And anybody else wants to contribute before we finish?
Yeah, I would like to just say a couple of words, Sudarshan. Thank you, Sudarshan, for organizing these lovely talks. I mean, for me, what it has done is it's helped bring in some theory behind things that we were doing quite ritualistically and in a very mechanistic way without fully understanding it, and thinking of, be it a bhakti in any way, which is a very, which we sometimes found it difficult to just totally immerse yourself in something without knowing much about it. So whereas these talks are helping clarify some of those things, and it's interesting to see that even with all this explanation and scientific explanation, you are getting to the same paths, which is through bhakti. So the bhakti path with jnana, I find, is a lot more helpful in understanding some of, I don't say that I understand all this, but it's just helping open up my eyes and opening up the opportunities for me to go and look out for things myself. So thank you, both of you.
Yeah,
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Brilliant, Ajit. And others, please stay and give a feedback. I think Madhu has put a lot of effort, so it will really help.
Can I go?
Yeah. Can I go on?
Yes. Hi. First of all, I want to thank you, Madhu and Sudarshan, actually for providing me this opportunity. I really, from the bottom of my heart. As somebody said, actually, I'm telling you guys now, I'm a non-Brahmin, but yet I'm always attracted to, actually the culture and whatever you guys have from my childhood. And I was attending satsang classes back then, actually 18, 20 years ago with my core friends. Jyotsna is one of that group, actually my close friend as well. But at that time, I used the classes as a coping mechanism because I was coming out of depression, change in the country, I had to change field and everything. But I used to go more for my son than myself. But now, actually through you, Madhu, your class, the first class, I was completely lost. I was awestruck by your knowledge. I was thinking, oh my God, he's my classmate. How can he know this much? Nothing went into my head. But then after the next week, actually I was looking forward to come and learn. Thanks to you, I've signed up for Sanskrit classes, and Josana is helping me, because I knew to read a little bit of Hindi. With that, I was reading the verses, whatever you were posting, but I was completely lost. But that motivated me, actually to go and attend, actually Ashtapati class I've signed up, and also Sanskrit. That is a positive thing for me. So it's a rippling effect, actually butterfly effect I'm feeling. again, once again, thank you for this opportunity. I do not understand a lot of things, but it has opened up my eyes, and I'm appreciating a lot more our culture, Vedic cultures, and now I'm going to start a debate with my friends. You know what?
Okay.
Please.
Brilliant, Kalai. I think, I think.
Sudarshan, can I just contribute one statement here?
Yeah, please.
So, Kalai, thanks a lot for that feedback, and I heard it twice or thrice now. I just wanted to tell you 2 minutes. At least this is what I'm passing from what my guru has taught to me and on all the co-students. Okay, so the fundamental concept is who is a Brahmana. Okay, so that is what it comes to. What does the word Brahmana actually mean? So it is Brahma and Ana. Okay, what is the meaning of Brahma? Brahma has got so many meanings. One meaning of Brahma is a name for Vedas. He who knows the Vedas is Brahmana. Okay, and then Brahma is also the Supreme Lord. He who knows the Supreme Lord is a Brahmana. So how can you know the Supreme Lord? By knowing the Vedas, you know about the Supreme Lord. So anybody who wants to know about the Supreme Lord is a Brahmana. Okay, that is the Vedic definition of who a Brahmana is. Okay, so I just want to stop there. So by actually us all joining here on Sundays and doing that kind of exercise to know about Brahma, which is the Veda, and to know about Brahman, who is the Supreme Being, we are all passing through that path of who a Brahmana was in the Vedic times. Now, over the generations and over the history of the Indian subcontinent, the social constructs have become so perverted, and that perverted social construct has been augmented by the politicians of today, that it is just a deplorable situation. I think that is where the reversion needs to happen. All of us are Brahmanas. Who is passing through the journey to learn about the Vedas and Upanishads and who wants to know about God is a Brahmana, is the Vedic definition. And we are all here to learn the Vedas, and we should just leave at that and say that we are all Brahmanas and then move forwards. That's what I wanted to say, Sudarshan. Thank you.
Thanks
so much.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I feel included now.
Yeah, you are always, yeah.
But I feel sorry for myself for missing the previous first classes.
That's
but it's good.
Sorry?
So I think, Kishorji, your contribution is greatly appreciated. So I think we need to get you to volunteer more for your knowledge that you have already with all background information. So we'll
absolutely.
Brilliant. Anybody else, Shushruth? Anybody else?
Yes, we wanted to say we agree with everyone. All they've said so far. Amazing effort by Madhuji. Explaining everything, having so much knowledge. Having knowledge and being able to explain are two different things. I think he has got both, so which is amazing. And having him there anytime to ask questions and get those answers, we're starting to understand. It just is amazing how our ancestors knew all this without any technology, without anything available to them. So they understood all this. That is amazing. And again, as Kishore was saying, that we didn't learn this before. I think we're now learning, we're understanding all this. And it also shows how big the whole universe is, and how small we are. So that, the ego bit, if you just think of it, the whole lifespan we are, and also the space, time, everything, if you take everything into account, we are just very, very, very tiny part in that. I think if you think of it, then you think of your ego, it's nothing. It's just, that's what should take the garva away, the pride away from us. When garva goes away, that's when we go closer to God. I think, so someone was asking, why do we need to know why this universe is so big? If you understand Lord, then you won't have any garva, or you know how low or how much smaller you are compared to Lord, the universe, and everything. So I hope I've made it clear.
Yeah, you're right. And I think, this important thing is learning these things. First of all, we have to know, you said tiny. I will not even use the word tiny.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just 1/1000th of a tiny. We are nothing, you see.
Nothing.
Like a small droplet in the sneeze, anything that comes. So that's all, we are nothing. And our even lifespan is nothing compared to the lifespan of the universe and everything. So that ego should definitely come down. But I think ego will start again in 5 minutes. So it will go down only now. Okay.
I think today was really good as well, because making us do things makes us go and revise and look at things, because it's very easy to just keep hearing Madhu and he is enchanting. So as his name is. So we get lost in his knowledge, and it's always good to go back and actually see what we have learned. So I would encourage everyone to take part actively and do this. So it was really useful.
Sure. Great. Janvi?
Yeah, I was waiting for my turn. I'm a total fake Hindu is the usual introduction I give about myself, saying, I call myself a Hindu, but I really don't know the first thing about Hinduism. So I guess this is a starting point, and I have got more questions than answers, which I think is good. Because once you start questioning is when you start looking for answers, and Madhu has got me started on that path. So thanks, Madhu.
Thank you. I just wanted to introduce Abhijit as well. Abhijit, you heard Abhijit's name several times. Madhu saying, he's our IT in charge for all the projects. He's a very young person, and he's very much interested in all these things. And he's not yet even married, but he's so much interested. We might have come because of we've done everything, and then we are a bit in the later part of the life. But he's still young and he's very much interested, and we want to thank him for that. Actually,
is Abhijit there?
Yes,
I really wanted to thank him because he's religiously, diligently, every Sunday the slides will come up. So I'm really thank you, Abhijit. Keep doing the good work.
Show your face, please. Show your face.
Sorry, there is no video on this PC. Sorry.
Okay.
There is no camera. Yeah, next time.
Abhijit, that's Abhijit's voice. He's there actually, but he's not able to show the video. But maybe another time. Yeah. Thanks, Abhijit.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Madhu, Suresh, Sudarshan. So
go
just
on.
wanted to say.
Suresh,
yeah. Brilliant. I won't repeat what's already been said. Fully aligned with that. But to me, I think the most significant difference it's made is it's rekindled the spirit of inquiry. Maybe those are not the right words. It perhaps has kindled the childlike curiosity into trying and understanding what we've been exposed in our childhood. So it's actually occupying most of the mind space now, and many things have got moved away. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Suresh. Yeah. Sudarshan, with all the enthusiastic discussions we've had, I've already had a volunteer who wants to do the summary slide for next week. I think it's Deval has just sent me a message saying that she would love to do end of Ganapati Puja mantra, and so she wants to do at the end. So we just need one volunteer who could do the revision bits for next week. So that maybe we can have that ongoing discussion, or maybe you want to nominate somebody. So because you are the administrator, we'll give you that responsibility.
Maybe Kalai?
Oh my God. Sudarshan, please. No, I'm not there yet.
Eventually,
I'm right now absorbing and imbibing. I'm sorry, Madhu.
So we are going to fix you up for the introduction on Sunday.
Oh no, please no. I don't know. No, not yet. Slowly, yes, I will do. Let me allow to still gather.
Okay, fine. That's fine. Whatever you feel. Okay, we'll keep talking anyway.
In the group, then somebody can come in the group. Yeah, not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, if there's not anybody else, then we'll sort of give a big hand to Madhu, and then we'll all meet next week.
Yeah, and also, if I can add, sorry, I think just Nandish again. Thanks to Sudarshan as well. I think we haven't thanked you, Sudarshan. You also been a very good administrator, and you chip in at the right time and with the right comments. So thank you.
Not at all. Thank you very much.
Sudarshan is always the backbone of all these events, so that's good.
Yes. Thank you, boss. Thank you.
Thanks, Madhu, again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Thank you, Madhuji. Thank you, Sudarshan.
Yeah, take care. Bye.
Namaste.